Yo, welcome back to Lollygagging, the podcast, where today we are going to be confronting life's most bizarre questions or stories that I have that are pretty bizarre and I want to share. Today we've got in store for you a pretty funny story that happened to me and my wife about a year ago, and I am excited to I'm so excited to share with you that. I'm going to try to leave in all of my mistakes and things that I mess up because I think that's also very real but also very funny. So, well, just bear with me as I continue to do this. So, we're just leaving all of the mistakes and everything. But I really hope you guys enjoy. Make sure that you are following me on Instagram. I'm posting a questionnaire. You can submit all of your questions to that questionnaire. Bizarre questions that you have that I can answer, or questions you think that are funny, like how many spoonfuls of cereal does it take to get to the end of a cereal bowl? Yeah. How many does that take? I don't know. Well, we should test that one day and try it out. But other than that, let's get right into today's story. So, this story takes place about a year ago. My wife and I moved to Florida, and we had just gotten here. It was like maybe a week into us moving into an apartment. Now, the apartment that we moved into an apartment with two other people. So that is very important to the story, is that there were roommates to the apartment that we lived in. And we barely had known them. We had met them through a Facebook group, and it was really cool, and how we had come to meet, and it was really cool. But we moved to Florida, and that first week we were there, they were out of town. They had gone back to visit their home families and everything. So it was just Kayla and I in our apartment. And we were hungry, so I was like, hey, we've got some Qdoba tortilla chips left over from when we went to Qdoba. And I was like, I'll heat them up in the oven and we can make some nachos. And Kayla was like, yeah, that sounds great. That sounds really cool. And I was like, awesome. So I'll go into the kitchen and I'll prepare it. So I got a pan out, sprayed the pan with some spray, non-stick cooking spray, and preheated the oven to turn on the broiler. So I sprayed down the pan. I put all of the chips on it. I sprayed the chips with the non-stick cooking spray. It was like an olive oil type cooking spray, so it was safe to put on things. And I just sprinkled a little bit of salt on those to give them a little bit of extra salty flavor because, just re-cooking them, reheating them, heating up chips in the microwave is a no-go. You gotta broil them a minute just to kind of make them more crunchy and kind of ready to go again. So I do that. Salt on. I'm like, all right, oven's preheated, so let me put this in. So I put them in on high. The broiler's on high. I put them into the oven, and we've got them in. I put them in. I close the thing up, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna set a timer because I don't want these to get too cooked. I'm gonna set a time for 3 minutes. For three whole minutes. I set the timer. I walk away. Kayla and I are watching a YouTube video. And I kind of forget about them, which you shouldn't do while you have something on a broiler setting on high right underneath the broiler. And Kayla looks at me and she goes, "Do you smell that?" And I was like, "Yeah, it kind of smells like something's burning." And then we go, "The chips!" And I was like, oh no. And I look over at the oven and there is smoke billowing out of the oven's exhaust. I didn't know ovens had exhaust places that if things are on fire inside of an oven, there's an exhaust vent that it comes out of. So it's just coming out of there. And we're like, oh no. I run over and guys, I'm so dumb sometimes. This is just one of those moments for me in my life that is just the worst. I look, I don't open it up just yet. I look at it and I just see flames, and I'm like, oh my god, our oven is on fire. So I pull down the oven door. I pull down the oven door, and smoke and flame just out of the oven and into my face. And we're like, oh my God, what is happening? Oh my God. We're just filled with fear because we're like, our oven is on fire, our apartment's gonna burn down, our roommates aren't even here. Like, and I grab, I grabbed the fire extinguisher, which in hindsight, I probably could have just closed the oven and turned the oven off, and it would have just kind of subsided. And that probably would have been a smart thing to do. But in the moment, I was like, I am a firefighter. In that moment, I became a firefighter, and I was like, I have got to put out this fire quickly. And no, I didn't grab water because that would have been very dangerous. I grabbed our fire extinguisher underneath our kitchen sink. I grab it, I unplug it, and I go, okay, open, and she just throws down. I go all into the oven, and I'm just and there is just, and it's not like foam. It's like a powder, like a release of like powder, green powder, and guys, it just like. Okay, so it goes into the oven. It goes all into the oven, and we had turned the oven off. We turned the oven off before we did all this, and then the fire stops, and we look, and there is literally green powder everywhere in our apartment, and I mean everywhere. And so Kayla and I are like, the house smells like smoke. We open every single window. I get a box fan and I put it in the window to blow out smoke out into the world. But when the fire was happening, right after we put it out, the fire alarms were going off all over our apartment. So we had to go around and undo all of the fire alarms. And a lot of the times the fire alarms are way up high. And Kayla and I are both very short, so we're like standing on a stool holding up a broom to undo the fire alarms because we can't reach them. We're like, and it's just all of them are going off. It was just. There's a saying in Alabama, people say that it's a Calgon moment, and it was a Calgon moment. Like, your brain is just like, what is going on? I almost burnt down the house. I almost killed Kayla and I because of a fire of trying to heat up Qdoba tortilla chips in the oven. So after all this is over, the fire alarms are going off. We get on turned off. And we call Kayla's mom, and we're like, hey, this is what's happening. She's like, go outside. So we go outside, and we just kind of sit outside for a minute. I see underneath, we were on a second floor. Underneath us, there was this elderly lady, and she had come outside, and she was about to call the fire department. And I was like, hey, no, don't call the fire department. It's okay. We have it under control. Like, we used the fire extinguisher. Everything's okay. And she was like, okay, cool, but... Man, if she would have called the fire department, that would have been real bad because we would have had to explain to them, hey, we started a fire, but we put it out, but we started a fire. Actually, he started a fire, pointing at me. He started a fire by turning on the broiler on high, heating up some Qdoba tortilla chips, and then walking away from them. And that's what I did. That very thing. And so that would have been really embarrassing to have to tell the fire department, and now it's also really embarrassing having to tell you guys that. But I think it's hilarious because in the moment I wasn't laughing. I was not laughing at all. I was like freaked out. I'm like about to cry. I'm like overstimulated, and I'm just like, what? This is crazy. Oh my gosh. And so, but after the fact, after we kind of got calmed down, we were like, that's hilarious. So needless to say, there was green powder all over that apartment. And there's also ash all over the apartment. Nothing happened to the oven. The oven was fine. We caught it soon enough that nothing had broke, and the oven was completely fine. So we were A1 firemen and firewoman to put out this fire, and so we did good. We got the fire out and everything, and it was out. It wasn't a great time, but it was out. So. But we had to go to Walmart that night, and we had to buy uh, we had to buy so many cleaning products. We had to buy leather wipes because there was a leather couch in our apartment. We had to buy like cleaning supplies because there was the green powder that was inside of the fire extinguisher was everywhere. So we spent that day, that rest of that day, and the next day cleaning the apartment. And then when we got done, we went to Walmart and bought like candles and the Febreze plug-ins to the wall so that the apartment didn't smell like smoke because it did. And that was just a crazy experience to be able to crazy bizarre experience that was almost burning down my apartment. So that was a that was that was a crazy time. I just man, that one was just that was a bizarre experience for me because I literally thought was going to burn down our apartment. And it was all from the Qdoba tortilla chips that I put in the oven on the broiler on high. And like they're not like when you like broil things, you're supposed to like put them like a couple feet, like a couple of inches away. I mean, when I tell you the broiler's here, the chips were here. I mean, they were like right there. And so I was like, oh, this is fine. I'm just gonna heat this up for a few minutes and we'll be good to go. That was not the case, and they were not edible for sure. They were literally you touched them, they just crumbled like they were black. So we didn't get to eat the Qdoba chips, and we spent the next couple of days cleaning. And we didn't tell our roommates that happened. Like we kept that from them until like we were almost about to move out, and we were like, "Hey, we gotta let y'all know something." Yeah, we almost burned down the apartment. Like it was bad. So, but we had to buy another fire extinguisher because the apartment complex that we lived in, they required you to have another like um fire extinguisher under the sink. So we had to go to like Walmart to buy a new one. Also, I didn't know what to do with used fire extinguishers. I was like, what do you do with this? So I called my dad and I was like, hey dad, what do I do with if you use a fire extinguisher? I told him what happened. Like I told him like, hey, this is what happened. He was like, wow, that's crazy. I bet you won't do that again. And I'm like, yeah, dad, definitely not gonna do that again ever again. And he just kind of laughed and I kind of laughed. But I was like, where do you take fire extinguisher? He said, probably to your local fire department. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I hang up with him. I call our local fire department. They don't answer. But luckily, they were like right next to where we lived at. So I just drove over to the fire department. And I was like, I knocked on the door. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? And I was like, I have this fire extinguisher. I just used it. Can I give it? They give it to you guys? And they were like, well, what kind of fire extinguisher is it? And I was like, there's different kind of fire extinguishers. And they were like, well, yeah, there's the foam ones, the gas ones. They've got there's loads of different kinds of fire extinguishers that I found out that day. But I was like, it's got green powder. And I'm like, oh, well, we can't refill that. We can't reuse that. You're going to have to just stow it away. And I was like, well, okay. So I just took it to our apartment complex's like trash bin and I threw it in there. And that was the end of that. And that was a really bizarre time for me. And for Caleb, because Caleb was really freaked out too. We were both pretty freaked out. But now that we look back upon it, we both laugh because it was just like one of those moments for me that was like, wow, dog, you are some kind of special for sure. Yeah. That was my crazy kitchen nightmare. Let me know down in the comments or wherever you're watching this at, or just shoot me a message. And if you have any crazy kitchen nightmares, and I'd love to hear them, or have any other bizarre stories or questions that happen to you guys we can talk about on here. I'd love to have guests on the podcast. So if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, please let me know. I love that. I love to have people on this podcast. I know Kayla and I did the first one, and that was a lot of fun. And I'm doing the same one myself, so this is something new for me, being able to talk to a camera, to myself. So I'm trying to keep the ball rolling here to get to like a certain amount of time, but that's always kind of hard. So with that story over, I do have something else I do want to talk about. Let me pull up my little sheet here. And okay, so here's a question I've googled. The question is, if you're playing a video game on a bet and you're almost winning, but suddenly your girlfriend calls, will you answer it or not? And I think that since this is a podcast and I also love gaming, that and I have a wife, I think I think I can answer this one very well. And if you have a girlfriend out there, I'd love to hear your answer to this as well. But to get into this and unpack this is a pretty good question. This is kind of bizarre because when you think about like gaming and you have a person or a partner who is special to you, then you have to think about it as like, would I do this or would I not do this? And for me, I tried to think about it like this: if I was playing a game and there is money on the line, so let's say I'm playing Halo, playing like I'm in a tournament. I'm playing, and if I get first place, I get $10,000. But I didn't let Kayla know, and she calls me, and I'm like last match, right in the moment, like I'm in it, like I am in that in a trance into the game. Like I am focused. She calls me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot to tell Kayla that I was in this game winning some money. I think that for myself, I would not answer. Now, that doesn't mean that I necessarily would be like, because I feel like if I didn't answer and then she texts me, I didn't text back, I would feel super bad. Like I'd be like, I can't like right now, like. But I feel like if I called her back later and she was like, hey, what's going on? And I was like, hey, I was in this Halo match, but I won and I won $10,000. I think Kayla would be like, that's awesome. I'm really happy. Like that's incredible. Like we can do so much with that. But I feel like on the other spectrum, other side of that, if I were to be playing a game and I'm just playing it and I'm ignoring her with the intent of like not reaching out to her, that would be in a space where I'd be like, okay, I would answer the phone call. So if I'm playing like Destiny 2 and I'm just grinding out some quest lines, and Kayla calls me and I'm like, you know what, I don't want to answer that right now, but I don't answer in the intent of trying to call back, then I think that's wrong. I think I would answer the phone. I'd be like, hey, what's going on? Like, what's up? Like I would engage in that conversation because I'm not doing anything that I think that is more valuable than the time that I will spend with Kayla. I think that if I were to spend the time, a more valuable time as like, hey, I'm playing this with the intent on winning money, then I think in that moment, in that environment, that would be okay to being able to like win some money and then be like, hey, I didn't answer your phone call, but I won some money. Like, I didn't, in that case, I don't think she'd be mad. I think she'd be like, okay, cool, that's awesome. But if I ignored her and she got home and she was like, why didn't you call me back? Then I think that would be grounds that there would be some tension in that. Like, she'd be upset with me. So I feel like in a sense, like if you have a girlfriend and you're playing games and your intent, if you get a phone call and you're in a moment of like, you're going to win something from this, I think in that moment, I think that's okay because you at least have something that is more valuable to the financial well-being of your life with the person that you're with than it being like you're just sitting there ignoring somebody for like ignoring them. I think that's rude, and I wouldn't do that if I were in that situation. But I think that's a cool question because it kind of gets into the mindset of a gamer and allows you to kind of think about that in the sense of if a person who's not into gaming were to answer that and be like, oh, I would totally drop that and answer the phone, then that's great, and I love that you would do that. But I don't think that as a gamer, if there was a winnings on the line, then I would not not necessarily answer the phone, but I would call back later. Now, I think the point that should be made is that if you are in communication with the girlfriend, boyfriend, wife, husband, whoever it may be, if you're in communication with that person, then you're like, hey, Thursday afternoon at 7 p.m., I'm going to play a tournament on this game. If you don't hear back from me, that's what's going on. I'm going to try to win some money. I think if you can communicate that with the person and just be like, hey, that's what's going on, then that person needs to be like, okay, cool, that's something that they're doing, that they're positive that they're going to do. And I think that goes for anything. If you're like playing, so like I love golf, I love playing golf. So if I go play golf with some of my buddies and my wife calls and I ignore her, that's blatantly rude. It's the same. I think it's the same aspect. But if I'm playing a tournament, like a golf tournament, and my intent is to win, and I have gone into that tournament telling her, hey, this is what's going on this day at this time, then I think that there is some respect there as well from each person, that they're like, okay, cool, I know that Dalton's at this time and place here. He'll call me when he can. If it's an emergency, I know that Kayla will be like, call me or leave a voicemail or text me, hey, I need you to call me right now, it's an emergency. And at that point I would be like, okay, cool, I gotta put this game down, this is way more important to me than this game. But I don't think that inside of an emergency, I do think that if there's winnings on the line, then I do think that at that point it would be okay to necessarily like go into kind of like headspace of like, I need to win this for money so that she and I can do something together. That would be important to both of us. So if I'm playing a Halo tournament or a golf tournament and she calls and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm on the last hole or I'm in the last moments of this game, I can call her back in about 30 minutes. I know that. Then I can call her back in 30 minutes like, listen, hey, this is what happened. I just want some money. Like, we're going to go on a trip together. And then she's like, oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. But I feel like she would want me to have gone into that, communicating that happen. And because if I'm playing golf and there's no intent of winning and I'm ignoring her, then that's really rude. And if I'm playing a game and ignoring her, then that's just so rude. So I definitely feel like, in the sense of gaming or life, if you can communicate with your partner that you are going to go into that place and do that, and it means a lot to you, then I know that they will come alongside of you and be in your corner for that. But if you're doing it without an intent of communicating and you're just ignoring the person, then I don't think that's right at all. So I guess that's what I have to say about that. That was a cool question, I think, that kind of delves into that mindset. And so if you found that interesting, please let me know. And if you didn't, and if you disagree with me, please let me know how you disagree with me, because I'd love to talk about that with you guys. I think that we're 23 minutes in. If you guys are having fun with this and you like this podcast, then please give this podcast a thumbs up on YouTube. It's going to go on my YouTube channel. But if you also like this podcast, you can get it anywhere, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts at, it will be available. Yeah, I think that's it. My name is Dalton, or Sir Dude, and this is Lollygagging the podcast, where we talk about life's most bizarre questions or stories, and we confront them and talk about them. If you have any bizarre questions that you would like to have answered, drop them down below. Drop them on the YouTube video. You can drop them on the Instagram. I'll have an Instagram post about Lollygagging. Excuse me. Oh my gosh. You can drop that on the Instagram post, a question about that too as well. But I hope you guys really enjoyed this, and I will try to upload these when I can, because I have a life. I have a life. I have a life and a wife and a job, and that all comes before this, but I still love doing it. So I hope you guys have a great afternoon. God bless you guys. Go out and love someone the way Jesus would love. All right, guys. See ya.